Thank you to each and every one of you for being here with us today. Meeting on a very special topic, deafblindness. Before we start our seminar, I would like to invite all your questions, your remarks, to put in the box below in your screens. But today is a very special day. It is almost 30 years since 1992 when the Nordic Council of Ministers came for the first time to show us the key how to open the deafblind world. And they do it every 5 or 10 years. And Nordic countries are sharing with us the best practice. They are giving an overview of service systems, and they share the best knowledge development in the deafblind area. That's why I express my heartfelt gratitude to the Nordic Council of Ministers. Let's do it once again. Now I would like to introduce the welcome speakers for the opening words. I invite Vida Gintautaitė, advisor for social and health issues. She will speak on behalf of Helen Nilsson, Director of Nordic Council of Ministers Office in Lithuania.
Dear all Estonian, Latvian, Lithuanian participants and Nordic speakers, Director Helen Nilsson regrets very much that she cannot be together with you, and she asked me to read her welcome speech. She says that she is very proud to be able to welcome you to this important and, she hopes, useful seminar on deafblindness. The basis for the Nordic Council of Ministers' work in Lithuania is the Nordic Vision 2030, which aims to make our region the most sustainable, integrated region in the world, promoting the idea of a green, competitive, and socially sustainable region. As written in our ongoing Finnish Nordic Council of Ministers Presidency Program for 2021, the Nordic countries will only be successful in becoming a driving force for peace, sustainable development, and welfare for all, leaving no one behind, if we do it together, developing international cooperation in an even closer partnership with the Baltic countries. This webinar is a concrete step in the right direction, totally in line with our vision and aims. Let me give you some facts. According to the World Federation of the Deafblind, 2018, on average, 0.2% of the population lives with deafblindness in the world. According to the Sense International, this is around 15 million people with severe deafblindness worldwide. Deafblindness is not recognized as a distinct disability group in many countries, which makes the group even more hidden than already is. The group itself is already very diversified, and everyone experiences the disability in different ways. They may therefore have different requirements for support and inclusion. Our Nordic-Baltic cooperation on disability issues has been lasting for many years. With the help of our partners, such as Nordic Welfare Center and other Nordic professionals, we have been able to build knowledge as well as competence in the region. We strive to improve the services for the disabled. It is important to make services better for them and their families. Our wish is to be able to bring policymakers and practitioners, as well as others, together to share knowledge and information. To be able to accomplish changes and progress, we need cooperation between everyone. We can raise awareness about deafblindness with the help of events, by arranging cross-sectoral group visits and sharing knowledge about support. Children's rights are especially important to us. As already mentioned before, it is important it is important not to leave anyone behind. Children with disabilities are easily excluded. This is why we want to continue promoting their rights. The identification process of the deafblind is not the same in the Nordic and Baltic countries. I hope we can learn from each other. With more information, we have the possibility to be able to address these issues we have in our own systems. It is essential that cooperation continues. This seminar is a part of the process to raise awareness. I hope you enjoy the webinar and be inspired to continue important work you are doing. Lastly, I would like to thank colleagues from the Nordic Welfare Centre and sister cities in Tallinn and Riga, as well as the Lithuanian National Agency for Education, Ministry of Education, and the Lithuanian Training Centre for the Blind and Visually Impaired. Also, other partners in the working group who made earnest efforts to have the webinar organized for the Baltic audience. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Vida. And now I would like to welcome Gražina Šeibokienė, Head of Division of Education Support, Ministry of Education, Science and Sport.
So, dear organizers of the webinar Nordic Approach to Deafblindness, dear lectors and participants of the webinar, it is a great honor to participate in this event, which is a nice contribution to other events held during the Week of the Deaf in Lithuania. This week we have various meetings and discussions in the parliament, government, in the ministries, in the education institutions. Yesterday, together with Jurgita Šugždinienė, the Minister of Education, Science and Sports, we had a meeting with the representatives of the Lithuanian Deaf Association and Lithuanian Education Centre for Deaf and hard of hearing. Together we are trying to find solutions on how to create best conditions for educating the deaf and persons with hearing impairment. I want to express my gratitude to the Nordic Council of Ministers Office, to Vida Gintautaitė, for the invitation to take part in this very, very important event for Lithuania. Thanks to the office, efforts are made to develop the system of support and education in Lithuania. Deaf blindness is a unique phenomenon in the international context in Lithuania, and we all understand that it requires special attention in the context of other disabilities, and especially high qualification, professionalism in making diagnosis, in providing education services and support to the deaf-blind people. In view of this, we must learn from each other and seek support in the countries having more experience and to accumulate efforts and know-how for our joint activities. Therefore, I am especially grateful to the main speakers of this webinar, to Maria Kreutz, Senior Advisor on the Deaf-Blind issues from the Nordic Welfare Centre, and Annika Maria Johannessen, Senior Advisor at Tactile in Norway. I am sure that their presentations will be very useful to all the participants and will be a stimulus for major changes in the work with the deaf-blind people. Lithuania started dealing with the problems of deaf-blind people only after it regained its independence. Therefore, we are grateful for the support of all the friendly countries. The initiatives of the Nordic Council of Ministers contributed greatly to the development of this sphere. They started in 1992, and in 1995, Lithuania started a long-term cooperation project between the Lithuanian Centre for the Blind and Visually Impaired and Oslo Scotland Centre for the Deafblind. I would like to extend my gratitude to Norwegian specialists who paid several visits per year to Lithuania, visited education and social care institutions and families looking for the deafblind children, provided counseling to parents and educators. In spring 2003, the Ministry of Education and Science decided to establish a division for education of the deafblind in the Lithuanian Centre for the Blind and Visually Impaired. This initiative was developed via a Hilton Perkins program and centers of the deafblind resources of the Nordic Council. The above division commenced its activities in the center on 8th of March in 2004, and I want to extend my gratitude, a special gratitude to Dalia Taurienė, a long-term head of this division. She's also one of the organizers of this event and moderator of this event. And although the number is decreasing of the deafblind people, they still receive support in the center. And yes, this support is continued to be provided. The events like this webinar help Lithuania to pursue international and national commitments. And Lithuania has adopted the UN Convention on the Rights of the Disabled, as well as amendments to the law on education of Lithuania. I mean, these acts open the opportunities for all to optimally reveal the potential, engage in the education activities, daily life, increase self-sufficiency and ability to create full-fledged future. Therefore, for us, it is very important to look for the ways on how to recognize the powers in each person as early as possible, to reveal these powers and capacities and eliminate all possible obstacles occurring in the environment information delivery. I believe that this webinar will be useful, interesting for all, and I wish you a constructive and interesting work and success in sharing this experience.
Thank you, Grażyna. And now we should start our presentations. And I would like to introduce you presenters. Maria Krautz, she works as a senior advisor at the Nordic Welfare Centre, where she is responsible for coordinating Nordic work in the area of deafblindness. Her attention is rights and a holistic perspective in life for people with disabilities. Especially, she is interested in the self-determination and participation for the people with intellectual disabilities and or deafblindness. She has personal experience in the subject of congenital deafblindness because she has a young man in the family with congenital deafblindness. So let's listen to the speech identification of congenital deafblindness in Nordic countries. Maria, you are welcome.
Thank you, Dalia, for your introduction, and so sorry for this delay. Now we can start all over again. And I will say again, thank you so much for inviting us to this webinar. Thank you for arranging this important webinar. It's an honor to be a part of it and to have the chance to share some of our experiences. And of course, it would have been so fine to get together and share experiences among us. But today we start with a webinar, and let's see how to go further from here. Thanks to all of you participants who have chosen to spend your time for some hours at this webinar. I'm sure that we can together make a difference for people with deaf blindness. For 2 years ago, me and another colleague visited Riga. We had a seminar there. It was very well participated and was an important day for me, and I'm carrying that day with me and all the good discussions we had in the process and so on. Maybe another time I could have the possibility to come and visit Lithuania and meet you face to face. Dalia made a nice introduction of me. Thank you for that. And I would just like to say something shortly about me. Who am I? Why am I? Why do I think I can say something about deafblindness? And why do I think I can share some knowledge with you? My background is that I have been working for 27 years in a Swedish organization who provides services for people with deafblindness and people with intellectual disabilities and people who are deaf. I have been guiding for staff, and I have been an educator at that place, and also a boss of some of the units, the head of some of the units who are providing those services. So I think that in that organization, I really got a solid ground in these issues. As Dalia says, I also have personal experiences in my family. I am the stepmother of a young man, a young adult man with congenital deafblindness. And because of that, I have had another perspective in this theme when I have it in personal and not only as a professional. And it has really enriched me. And it also gave me some new thoughts. It gave me some new thoughts when I got into the family with my theoretical background, and then I need to rethink something, because it's something to have it on a theoretical ground, and then another thing to have it in your daily life. Today, I'm working at the Nordic Welfare Centre, and I'm coordinating the deafblind issue. We are arranging webinars. I coordinate networks and expert groups who are spreading knowledge, developing knowledge, and so on. So all these three together, what does it mean? It means that I know that there are so much knowledge, there are research all over the world, there are knowledge that we can build our work on, but I also know that there is a big gap between all the knowledge and the research and the daily life for people with congenital deafblindness, also in the Nordic countries. Many children and young people are living in municipalities, and they are joining the municipalities' services, who are very, very good, of course, but it's very often that they don't have the knowledge, the specific knowledge about deafblindness. Therefore, it's a big gap between research knowledge and the daily life for many people with deafblindness. But of course, we want to make a change in that sake, and I think that we can do that together with you as well. But I will start in another way before we go into the Nordic definition, because we will come to the Nordic definition and some consequences about that. And then I will hand over to Annika, who will say something more on the Norway situation. The Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, it was taken 2006 from the United States, UN, United Nations, sorry. And it was a very big difference, because we changed the whole perspective from an individual level of looking at disabilities onto a society level. So the responsible for prepare for people with disabilities to join the society in a full way, it is on a society level to do it, because earlier it was we looked at the people with disabilities on an individual level and looked it in a much more medical way and not in a holistic way. The UNCRPD includes many things, and I won't go deep into it, but I just have pinpointed something, and I will go back to it when we go into the definition and the consequences of having deafblindness. Right to live in the community, what does that mean? Fully live in the community. Then the society need to have an environment that it could be inclusive for people with deafblindness as well. We have also freedom of expression and opinion, and if you should be able to do that, you need to have a way of communication, and that is something that we are going deeply in later on in this presentation. I also would like to highlight the right to education and right to participate in a cultural life. And if you should be able to do that, if you have deafblindness, it also means that the environment around need to have a specific knowledge, and we need to have accessibility for people with deafblindness, of course. Another convention mentioned also by Vida is the Convention on the Rights of the Child. And a very important thing in that convention is for every child, every right. For children with congenital deafblindness, every right. And also, of course, in that one, I'm not going to read all this. You don't have to be nervous. I just wanted to highlight that there are many things. This is the Article 23, and it pinpoints children with disability, how it should be managed for them so they could be on an equal level with all these rights. And I think that if we have that as a stable ground to look at both of those conventions, then we have a solid ground to stand on and look further on. The next thing I would like to say something about is the Nordic definition on deafblindness. In the 80s, the Nordic countries got together in the early 80s because they realized that each country in the Nordic area is too small, and the population is quite small, and also the diversity within the population of people with deafblindness is so very big variations within the group. And they found out that they need to cooperate. They couldn't do it alone. And one thing that was very important to start with was, what are we talking about? Are we talking about the same thing, everyone? We need a definition. What is deafblindness or combined hearing and vision loss? Because if you say deafblindness, maybe you think that it's only people who are totally deaf and totally blind, and that's not the issue at all. Because the senses affect each other, and maybe you cannot compensate they cannot compensate for each other. I will just read it to you. Deafblindness is a combined vision and hearing impairment of such severity that it's hard for the impaired senses to compensate for each other. Thus, deafblindness is a distinct disability. I would also mention here that it is, you know, the knowledge that has been built around this, and the experiences and the methods, the pedagogical system that you can use for this. You can also use it in other groups, with people with other disabilities, especially people with severe intellectual disability, and where you don't think that there could be any communication development, because the methods really works, and you can spread it in a wider target group. And I think that's very important to think about, because otherwise you maybe think that, oh, but we don't have any children, we don't have any adults with deafblindness. Oh, but how do you work with communication? How do you work with participation, and so on? Maybe we can use some of the methods. So I really would like to encourage you to look at it in a broader way. I need to look at my watch sometimes so I don't run out of time. And the Nordic definition, you can find it on our website. The last slide on my presentation, we can send the presentation out to you. There you will find all the links to some publications and to our website, where you can find the definition in English, of course. To varying degrees, deafblindness limits activities and restricts full participation in society. If you go back to the Convention on the Rights for People with Disabilities, one of the rights is full participation in the community and the society. Okay, so here it's something difficult to reach if you have deafblindness. It affects social life, communication, access to information, orientation, and the ability to move around freely and safely. To help compensate for the combined vision and hearing impairment, especially the tactile sense becomes important. And here is one of the key sentences when you are talking about knowledge within the theme of deafblindness, and it's the tactile sense. There are so much knowledge about that, and we are not going so deeply today. We don't have the time, but I really would like to inspire you. I would like to inspire you to just remember that and search for everything that you can within that theme of tactile sense, because it's so important when you are working with people with deafblindness, especially children with congenital deafblindness. So the consequences, how could the disability deafblindness affect your social life? Well, of course, it will be very, very limited if you are not able to move freely around the world because you don't see and you cannot hear. You need to have an assistant or a guide or a partner beside you if you are going to explore the world. And of course, that will affect your social life. The communication, if you don't hear any language, you cannot see any sign language, how can you develop communication? And the first thing, for maybe not for you, but for other people, they think, but how do they communicate? Can people with congenital deafblindness communicate at all? Of course, but you need to have this special knowledge about it, and that's the most important thing, because if you cannot communicate, then you cannot have a social life. You cannot get access to information, and you cannot have the ability to move around freely and safely. If you can communicate, of course, it doesn't solve everything about the orientation thing and the ability to move around freely and safely, but there will be so much more possibilities for you to take part of the social life and the society overall if you have an environment around you that can support your communication development. What are the needs and responsibilities for the society to make an environment that make people with congenital deafblindness participating in the society. Of course, we need strategies on a societal level. Then it needs laws and so on, of course. But we also need a new perspective of not seeing an individual as a patient and just something you could look on a medical view, because you need to look at it in a holistic perspective. How can we ensure that people will get all the rights fulfilled that they have? We need to ensure that there is enough knowledge, and this webinar, I think that this is a small step. This is a start to share knowledge and to just inspire you to reach out for knowledge, and of course also to share experiences among us within the countries, the Baltic area and the Nordic area. We also need to create good social environments, because otherwise it is impossible to get full participation in the society. And when I say that we need to have this new perspective, it also means that we need to look at a person with congenital deafblindness with new eyes. Maybe we see a person who cannot communicate, who cannot develop anything, who cannot explore the world. But if you have the right knowledge, you can meet the person on her or his level, and then you together can explore the world, but you surely need some knowledge for it, of course. Why do I say something like this? Well, this is from a book with a title, If You Can See It, You Can Support It, a book on tactile language. Maybe some of you have been joining the webinars during the spring that we have going deeper into 5 chapters within the book, and we are going to continue this autumn, 3 more chapters. In that book it says, when we put on our language glasses and give bodily tactile utterances a linguistic value, we can communicate with persons with congenital deafblindness on a linguistic level. So that does mean that you change your perspective and that you see this communication development and communication overall from another perspective and from another view. This does not mean that all the in the whole Nordic area, this is fulfilled. It is not. It's a very long way to go. But we're working on this Nordic definition to have it as a common ground. And then we would like to reach out so we can look on deafblindness as a distinct disability, and from that build environments for the people with deafblindness, where they can develop, they can participate, and they can be equal. We have some publications on our website, and as I said, we will share this with you so you can find the links to all the publications and the information about the networks and so on. And we also have a Facebook page. You can join us because some of they are in English, some of the information there, so you can see what webinar are coming up and so on. And I will stop sharing my presentation there, but I would like to say that it's just some minutes to say something about the definition and the convention, the CRPD, and the Convention for Children's Rights, and just to say that if we do it together, we can make a difference, and we also could build knowledge together, because you are the experts on your society systems, and then the way how to do it, how to share the knowledge, how to build systems to look in this in a social function way, then it's important that we do it together, because we are not, each of us are not strong, but we can be strong together. And I would like to end, I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce this right, but Kartu esamesti presni. No, you look so, I didn't do it well at all. I would like to say, together we are stronger. I really would like to see at this webinar as a start of a future and strong cooperation together, because this is a small group and we really need to cooperate on this, in this field. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria, very much for your sincere words. And I just want to repeat once again what you told. Many years ago, Nordic countries decided they are too small, the population is too small, and that means the numbers of deafblind people are very small. That's why the countries decided to cooperate and decide the definition, the services. And I think that there is no Swedish definition. There is Nordic definition.
It
It
is.
is used in Norway, in Sweden, in Iceland, in Finland. So I think it's a very, very good thought we should think about in our small Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia, because we are even smaller than you are. So
and the definition, it's always it is also used in European countries, some of them, and all over the world, because as Vida said in the, or maybe it was you, there are not so many countries having a definition, and then it's so, because it's a diversity of the target group, then it means that it's impossible to get to work very distinct if you don't have a definition. What are we talking about?
yes, because deafblindness is one at least understood, I think so, of all disabilities. And you cannot find the medical code for deafblindness. You cannot look in the medical papers to be written that this child is deafblind. So we have to decide it in our own way, together with some experience from your countries. But
and
I think
then
the
I would
knowledge,
like, I just want to say something that we are in right now. I came home from Oslo yesterday, and we are working in a project to create a material of to see who are deafblind. How can you find people with deafblindness? And we will, when it's ready, maybe in 1 year, 1.5, we will interpret it translate it into English, so it could be available for you as well. And I will let you know as soon as we have this material.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, let's have our another presenter. It is, I'm welcome Annika Maria Johannessen. She has a Master of Science and Communication and congenital deafblindness. She works as a senior advisor in the Norway Center for Special Education in Bergen, in the Department of Deafblindness and Dual Visual and Hearing Impairment, which is also a part of the Norwegian National Advisory Unit of Deafblindness. Annika has about 20 years of clinical experience working within the field of sensory impairment and special education, and about 15 of those with people with congenital blindness. Now she works primarily with identification of congenital deafblindness, psychological and educational assessment. She also works with knowledge development and research within this field. She is one of the authors of the Tactile Working Memory Scale and has been a member of different expert networks coordinated by the Nordic Welfare Center during the last 15 years. So I welcome Annika to share her knowledge about congenital deafblindness. How do you do it in Norway?
Okay, whoops. I'm unmuted now, and I will just open my, oops. Here. So thank you, Dalia, and Maria, and all the others. And I'm also have to say that I'm very humble for the planning group to letting me speak here today. As Dalia introduced me, I'm Annika Johannessen, and I work as a senior advisor at Statped, the National Service for Special Need Education in Norway. And I work, as she said, in the Department of Deafblindness and Dual Visual and Hearing Impairment. And I have been there for now approximately 15 years. I will try to speak very slowly today because of the interpretations, and I can tend to rush a little bit, so I hope if I'm too quick at some points, somebody will pick on my shoulder and a technical way and ask me to slow down. Before we start, I will ask you to please not take any pictures of the last slides I will present today, because there are authentic pictures of persons and they all have given their consent to show the pictures, but only in this webinar. So the rest of the slides I'm very happy to share, and also if it's some important things in the last ones, I will just, after this webinar, I can take it back and just drop the pictures. So I'm very happy about that. Also, I will probably use different concepts that may not be so familiar to all of you. I hopefully managed to explain them during this talk, but if there are anything you wonder, please feel free to use the chat function and I will try to address them after the talk. So, the system of deafblindness in Norway. Oops. Sorry, I just need to go back a little bit. Yes. So, the system of deafblindness in Norway is mainly funded by the Health Ministry. But because of the huge implication it is for a human being to live with deafblindness, our service is also a collaborative funded by the Educational Ministry to ensure that service is provided in every aspect of the person with deafblindness life. I will start our session today to try and give an overview about how our system are organized before I will aim for the main topic of my speech, how we are assessing to identify people with congenital deafblindness in Norway. So here, this is Norway, and as you see, it's a long country. But even if it's a big and long country, we don't have more than around 5 million people living here. The National Advisory Units on Deafblindness is, as I mentioned earlier, a part of the Special Health Service and the National Service for Special Need Education. The unit has 4 region centers: North, Southwest, Southeast, and West, and I work in the West part. We also have a National Resource Center located in Southeast that mainly is concerned with rehabilitation and habilitation. And they work towards congenital deafblindness and acquired deafblindness, but maybe they have most experiences within the populational acquired deafblindness. In Norway, we only still have one state-provided special school left, and that's a political inclusion thought that Maria also mentioned from the Child Convention, that every child should be the right to live home in their environment, together with their families and stuff like that. So, but still we have one state school, and that's organized within the Statute system also. And that's the school for congenital deafblindness called the Diamond. Actually, it's quite new now. It's the former Skådalen. I heard some of you mention Skådalen earlier, but now it's called the Diamond, and I think that's very nice. And it's located in Oslo. Still, most of the children with congenital deafblindness goes to local kindergartens and public schools in the area they live. One of my major work tasks is to provide knowledge and supervise the networks such as parents, families, teachers, and other support persons around the child about how to be in the world with congenital deafblindness and implement interventions towards the communication development. All our interventions are tailored to each and every child, but one of the basics is to support a child and the network to communicate within the bodily tactile modality. So, we serve both congenital and acquired deafblindness. Still, we are most of the time divided in teams who are specialized in either congenital or acquired deafblindness. With that said, we also collaborate very closely in many cases, and especially the gray areas where, for example, a person with congenital deafblindness are in more need of a specialized service from the acquired team, or vice versa. I work in the specialized team for congenital deafblindness. And the differences is when the dual sensory loss has occurred, if it's before or after language acquisition. That's how we divide them. I know these days that people talk more about early onset than congenital, but well, we don't go into that discussion now. So, in addition to the National Advisory Unit on deafblindness, we have a national interdisciplinary team for diagnostics and identification of deafblindness. As you can see here on the slide, this team consists of a medical eye specialist, a medical ear, nose, and throat specialist, a genetics, a psychiatric, a special psychologist, a neuropsychologist, and pedagogical specialist within audio vision and special need education. And also we have a child neurolog attend if needed. The aim of the team is to ensure the quality of medical and functional assessment processes, reports and diagnostics from the public service, in addition to conducting diagnosis and identify deafblindness, both acquired and congenital. So we have a big system here in Norway with such little population, and it's all state-driven from the ministry. So we don't need. It's not like what do you call it? Private schools or systems. Mostly, it's provided by the state. So by the 1st of January 2021, 105 registered person with congenital deafblindness is registered in Norway, and 39 in an assessment process, and 251 with acquired deafblindness, and 65 in an assessment process. Still, even if we have a state-funded service, it's still a black numbers, especially if we compare to the other Scandinavian countries. And you may ask, why is that? Yeah, we also ask that sometimes. Well, I do think it comes down to different whys. First of all, it's a small and rare population that most systems come across very rarely. Our long country has a lot of hospitals and other services that necessarily don't have the information about our service or don't necessarily manage to recognize the severe combination of visual and hearing impairment, especially if it's combined with other issues or diagnoses. For example, in the autism spectrum syndrome, we see that a lot of people with or children with a congenital deafblindness may have first an autism diagnosis. Yes, and sometimes different specialists really don't collaborate good enough around these persons. It's said in some of our hospitals is very good at collaborating between the hearing specialist and the vision specialists, but not for all the hospitals. But anyway, we are constantly working with that issue, providing information and collaboration with other services, hospitals, and educational units too, such as teaching in different universities and so on. So, our service has a lifelong perspective. That means that our authorities has acknowledged that the consequences of deafblindness is so complex and so severe that the need of service in all areas of life and throughout their life is necessary to be able to reach their potentials and be provided the opportunities to live as quality people. So now we have gone through a little bit of how our system is built up. So now I will draw the attention to the fun bit, I think, to the identification process. And I will draw the attention to the ground perspectives we have during the identification process. A functional understanding of deafblindness means that it's the consequences of dual hearing and vision impairment that is in focus. When that is said, we always collect medical and objective assessment results within our functional assessment to get a base knowledge about the person's vision and hearing and other relevant information. Just a second here. So then we address the bodily tactile modality to see how that modality compensates for the visual and hearing impairment. That means that during the assessment process, we need to move between a deficit perspective, how severe the dual sensory loss is and how it affects the person's life, and an assets perspective. How can the bodily tactile modality compensate? Because most children we assess are deprived for bodily tactile optimization and interventions to support their development in a sense where they actually can access the world and develop. There is a need for a dynamic assessment approach to get the necessary information about how they use their bodily tactile modality. The dynamic assessment approach can be quite time-consuming because we need to supervise the team around the child, how to optimize and support child's bodily tactile strategies. The identification process can sometimes take a couple of years before we have a solid enough data about how the child development profit by offering bodily tactile interventions. And that's also because sometimes the medical or the objectives that have been assessed doesn't really give us enough information back to doesn't really always give us enough information. And then I talk especially about processing disorders, for example, that your ears can work pretty fine, but your brain can't really process what comes in the ears. And the same with, for example, CVI problems and stuff like that. So you can have quite good medical data, and then you will also see that because of the consequence and how they compensate within that bodily tactile modality has a big impact on their development. So that's why we use the functional or the functional understanding of deafblindness is so important during the identification process. So today I have chosen to focus on the assessment of the bodily tactile modality. Well, just a small taste of it because it's a huge area, like Maria said, and we don't have much time today. So I chosen that because I think that's maybe the most complex assessments area and often the most important area when identifying children with congenital deafblindness. So, highlighting the bodily tactile modality. Well, I just need to look at my watch. Yes, I do think we are in time. So, highlighting the bodily tactile modality. In the overview of the main implication in the Nordic definition, as Maria mentioned earlier, it's written to help compensate for the combined vision and hearing impairment, especially the tactile sense becomes important. Well, in my team, we extended that to the bodily tactile sense, and we base our understanding of how different bodily tactile, and we base that on our understanding of how different bodily tactile sensory impressions, such as touch, pressure, the vibration, temperature, pain, and proprioception, the position of our own body parts are processed through the somatosensory system. The somatosensory system is responsible for the systematically receiving, perceiving, and organizing bodily tactile information. Soma is the Greek word for body, and the somatosensory system depicts that the whole body, for example, my head, my mouth, my nose, hands, fingers, legs, backs, feet, everything in our body is used to be able to process various bodily tactile sensory impressions. In other words, the somatos. Sorry, I just have to have a drink. I'm so sorry. In other words, the somatosensory system is involved in the active use of the bodily tactile sensory impressions from all over the body so that we can select, interpret, categorize, and store information for the purpose of recognizing objects, places, and people. And basically that means that the bodily tactile sensory modality is a very good sense for learning. It's just so the limited of that sense is because it's limited to the access within the framework where you can touch. So, but it's a good sense for learning. So with that in mind, coming back to the model you can see in front of you, I've tried to sort out observational cues connected to what we are looking for when assessing the bodily tactile modality, and further try to highlight some of the aspects in the model and show some picture of what it can look like. I want, when I have this, if we go back to the model, the social life and communication, orientation and the ability to move around freely and safely, and access to information is the consequences of deafblindness. So when we look, you can see a line from each of these circles, and there is some bullet points there that suggest different areas to intervene and look for while identifying or assessing the bodily tactile modality. But it's a red kind of square round separate from this model, and that's the environmental conditions. And sometimes I think that's it's maybe the most important part, and there the assets process, the interventions you provide is mostly to the environmental condition. So further on, I will go and talk a little bit of potentials, how we can optimize the physical and social environment within a bodily tactile to be able to recognize the potential and how the person use their bodily tactile senses to compensate for the hearing and visual impairment. So now I will start on my the slides that there are some pictures of, and they're all authentic, some of them with myself and some of them with other colleagues. Of course, as I said, everybody has given their consentence for me to show this with you today, but I would like to you please not to take any copies of it, and the text could be provided for you later on. So this is me lying together with a little girl with Charge syndrome on the floor in her everyday kindergarten. So to optimize the physical and social environment, we need to adapt the learning environment. By adapting the learning environment, we mean to be in the world together with the person with the congenital deafblindness in a bodily tactile manner, providing possibilities for shared exploration within the bodily tactile proximity and touch, supporting tactile perceptual strategies and enhance additional abilities during the interaction. So in this picture, you can see that I'm holding my hands light above the child's arms. And I do that because I want her to have a to achieve tactile information that I am having my attention towards what she is doing. She doesn't hear and she doesn't see. So I use my bodily tactile strategy to show her that I'm looking at what you are doing at the moment. And that's a way of optimizing the environment. And as you also can see, we are in very close bodily contact. She knows, she has a strong contact point with me, my whole body. So she feel my breathing and stuff like that. Yeah. So let's have a look at the concept of attention. If we go back to the model I showed you, if we have that in mind, one of the bullet points towards the line of communication and social life also, it's about attention and attention direction. So attention and attention directedness can be hard to recognize within the bodily tactile modality. It can look very different simply because the attention rarely are shown in the eye gaze that we are used to when we see, or in the face position where we are also used to look for it, but need to be recognized within the body and the body positions. Therefore, it can easily be overlooked when observing. When being in a bodily tactile interaction, you can easier feel the attention of the other by noticing and respond to the bodily tactile information you get from the person, such as tenseness, that's a hard one, of tone, a speed of movement, degree of pressure, and so on. You also need a knowledge of how your own bodily tactile strategies can support, such as neutral and joint attention. That is the base of communication and learning. So, sustaining the flow of the interaction and attention over time all comes down to foster a sense of togetherness within the bodily tactile modality. For example, using bodily tactile techniques such as narrative strategies. A narrative strategy is basically how we support the attention direction. As you're seeing here in person, we often do that, but using, for example, tempo shifts in our vocal to keep others' attention. You can, like when you talk with children and you can make something very, very exciting, do it very, very, very slow, and then boom, something happened, and wow, you wake up. For example, that's one narrative strategy based on the vocals, for example. We use the same principles within the bodily tactile modality too, but when we use, for example, shift in, we use, for example, the shift in muscle tension for example, tighten our muscles or relax our muscles, or playing with our fingers. I'm not quite sure because I don't see if I'm online here, so I hope you can see what I'm doing because I'm just I don't know if I'm showing at the moment. Well, anyway, I can try to just doing playing a little bit with your finger does something else with the attention direction than just having a plain hand, for example. So that's narrative strategies that is good strategies for also the bodily tactile modality. So as I mentioned, you need to know your own bodily tactile strategies to be able to support the attention and the flow within the interaction. Anyway, here I'm sitting on the floor with this little girl that I was lying on the floor with earlier. It's many years ago now, but also here we work with the attention in a bodily perspective, where I am following her attention and I support by changing my hand position. I will come back to that, for her to follow my attention. Yes. So we are still in the optimizing. It's another child with another partner. A part of keeping the flow and attention in the interaction is to scaffold, to move progressively towards stronger understanding and greater independency of the communicative process. So here it's a little girl. She has a cerebral palsy, and if you can see her partner, she's really stabilizing her body, and then they are working on the reciprocity of, you can't really see it, but on banging on the wall or the window thing, and in the aim of being in a turn-taking reciprocal turn-taking, and to explore her new environment at that moment. So here we will see that closer in the next picture. This hand over hand. Can't really see it very well. Maybe in picture 1, you can see the girl is in a listening position when her partner is going up to the fence, and then she starts to explore herself in the middle picture, and they are next to each other, having the same attention. And this is yeah, and then she moves a little bit, and then the partners start to come up to say, "Oh, I can see your attention is going further." So I kind of like this pictures, even if it's hard to see. And there it is, back to the recognition of what the bodily tactile potentials and resources in these children, because we are not so very used to look for it usually. And that's important to recognize when you're doing assessment for identification of deafblindness. Yes. So to establish multi-party context, I don't know if you ever heard about multi-party context, but it's done a lot of research, because earlier days it was very important to be one-to-one, but for others, communication and development, to have access to people talking, to be in an overhearing position, for example, is very important for the communication development and also for the social inclusion. So to establish multi-party context gives access to 2 or more partners in a bodily tactile manner. Being in the overhearing position may put the participant in a natural position to hold the information active in mind and be tactually following and able to contribute to the ongoing conversation. Also, it's about access to social life, to be a part of other person's conversation and be able to contribute. So offering narrative and multi-party conversation should be enhanced to children from an early age to support communicative and cognitive development. Also, optimizing for such multi-party context can give us valuable information about different areas of attention, flow, processing time, turn-taking, among other things within the bodily tactile modality. Because when the people interact or having a conversation, this context provides a natural environment for all this to occur. So that's why the optimizing part is very important. So the next photo roll I want to show it to you, and we are heading for the last one. So this photo roll are with 4 photos. The first 2 are showing a young man with congenital deafblindness and his partner exploring a tree trunk, standing on the beach. by actively engage in the stretching and holding around the tree trunk. The partners support the construction process of the tree trunk. They are feeling. So there it's like information and experiences. The last two shows the same young man and his partner sitting on the bench later that day. They jointly remember their experience, talking about what happened earlier today. So with these 4 pictures, I'm trying to exemplify how to optimize for access to activities and experiences. So engaging the person with congenital deafblindness in an activity that includes different degrees of emotional involvement and provide a context for shared experiences will give us a lot of information necessarily for the identification process. All the previous pictures give us a lot of information about how the child used their bodily tactile modality to compensate for the visual and hearing impairment. And sometimes I feel it's the optimizing of the environment and the person in it that takes the time when we talk about the time the time issue earlier while doing the dynamic assessment, because people need to learn and understand how to use the body, how to support the child in their everyday areas. And that takes a little time, or can take a lot of time. So usually if those conditions are already optimized, you recognize quickly how fast a person with deafblindness show their bodily tactile strategies and potential. And that surprised me so often that, you know, you can come in and then whips, then if you have the knowledge to understand what you are recognizing and see how to use this modality, you can see children just, wow, people come to say, I never seen this child sustained attention for so long time, for example, or so explorative, or yes. So it's all about which classes we have and what we are and trained, or what kind of knowledge we have while doing different assessment for different things, because behavior can look similar, but the background for behavior could be really, really different. So, yes. So this is my last PowerPoint. And this is about navigation. And here you can see a woman, she's a grown-up woman. She is totally deaf and totally blind have been that in all her life. No reducible hearing and seeing. And she has rubella syndrome. Here you see her alone. A lot of the things I have been talking about by optimizing is within the interactional perspective. But also for this totally deaf and totally blind, congenital deaf and blind person, she has some strategies because the environment she lives in has recognized her potentials and understand her need to be in the bodily tactile, in the world. But what so for her to walk safely around her house seems important to her. And these 4 pictures, she used her bodily tactile modality to navigate around her house. And for those of you who work with blind children, for example, a lot of of mobility routes and mobility strategies is probably well known for you, I think, and that's the same here. They have been working with a kind of navigation route, but based very strongly within the bodily tactile modality, of course. And this is, she likes to be free, the free movement. Yes. So anyway, they have given her good access to information, so she's able to navigate. So if we look closely at her hand shape, she changes her hand shape for next step in her navigation. So if you see the first one, she used the fence to feel it to the left, probably. For the next step in her navigation. And then when she comes to a point in her fence, she reaches out like this. She doesn't see anything, but still she...
Okay, it seems something happened because we lost Annika, but I think that we understood what she was trying to tell us. That identification of deafblind, congenitally deafblind children is a very time-consuming process. And you need a big network of professionals to discuss, to speak, and to be with child, trying to understand how the child is using tactile sense, because it becomes very important to compensate the vision and hearing impairment. And one more thing, that in the country of Norway, where they have 5 million people living, they have 105 congenitally deafblind children, and 39 is in the process of assessment. And the knowledge about deafblindness, tactile communication is very useful not only for deafblind but for autistic children and children who are mentally retarded and has very little communication. So it's a pity that we lost Annika. Thank you very much. I hope that you can hear me. And the time tells that I'm very sorry, but we lost the coffee break, but I hope that we will manage. And now manage without coffee, but during the presentation. And now I would like to tell you that you are very welcome to write questions, and that the seminar is now on recording, and you will be able to see it online later. So now is the time for Ligita Geida, Director of Riga Strazdų Muiza Center for the Visually Impaired and Blind Children in Riga. Where is Ligita?
Hello.
Hello, Ligita. Maybe you will introduce yourself. Who are you? How are you being?
Yeah. Hello. I am Ligita Geida. I am principal of the School for Blind and Visually Impaired Children in Riga, in Latvia. And actually, when I was asked to take part in this webinar or discussion about the questions of teaching, or maybe not teaching, but work with deafblind children, I was not sure that I am the right one. But on the other hand, maybe I am, because in our school we have blind, visually impaired blind children, low vision children, and blind and multi-disabled visually impaired children also. But when I thought about this Nordic definition, and it's pointed there that such severity that is hard for the impaired senses to compensate for each other. And I would say that yes, we have children with visual and hearing impairments here in our school, and I also had discussions with my colleagues in schools for hard of hearing and deaf children. We have 2 of such schools in Latvia, and we found out that they also have few children with visual impairments in the level of low vision, not blindness. And for now, I would say that all these children have such such level of impairment that they can't compensate each other. So those who are whose leading impairment is visual impairment, we would say, they are in our school and we work with them. Or maybe they are kindergartens for visual impaired children, and those whose leading impairment is deafness or hard of hearing, they are in schools for children with hearing impairments. And I think that I know also during all those years that system of support of deafblind people in Nordic countries is very well established, and we just can learn from you, and thank you for the great experience and exchanges. We are on our way to do it, of course, and we have no separate classes or divisions somewhere for deafblind children like they are in your country, in Lithuania. But we are on our way to register these people, and I also had a discussion with eye doctors from our children's hospital, and we have that Center of Rare Diseases, and for now they have started the registration of people with dual sensory disabilities, and they told me that for now they have registered, but they are adults, 6 people who have Usher's syndrome, and 3 of them are clinically approved, and 3 of them genetically approved. So and also they have one girl who is deaf, and her vision is also unfortunately going worse, and it seems that she probably also will be proved like having Usher's syndrome. So on the other hand, we have quite many multi-disabled children, also including multi-disabled visual impaired children, those whom meet we in our school or in our experience. They don't have any improvements. They have also hearing impairments, but we have some hard of hearing, and still we can use our methods working with them, and they don't need such an deep and big intervention like it could be necessary for deafblind children. So on the other hand, also we are a bit worried that we who work in the field of visual impairment or hearing impairment, we pay attention to our children. We at least know what it means if they can be blind, or maybe a very high level of low vision, or maybe deafness or hard of hearing. But there are great risks in our institutions where are those children with multiple disabilities, with severe multiple disabilities, that they cannot notice these like problems with hearing or vision, and they can, and also of course they can have those additional like diagnoses like autism. And there is this risk that they can just not notice, and those kids can maybe not to get the support that they need from very, very early beginning from childhood, if they are. We haven't met for now those congenitally deafblind kids in our experience, but as I told, I am not sure that we don't have them, even though we are very small population. So this is why, of course, we just can learn from those experiences whom we can meet, and very great thanks to our Nordic colleagues for sharing. And of course, I know, for at least we know that there are people whom we can ask for support and for suggestion if we'll need. And also thanks to our Lithuanian colleagues who do already great work. So thank you for attention.
Yes, now we are waiting for Male Kariste. She is from Tallinn, Helen School, but it seems that she is somewhere but not in our conversation. So it is time for discussions, and I have some questions, and I will tell what. So the question is about why it is not enough to have two teachers, one for the deaf and one for the blind, in order to help deaf-blind child. Why it is necessary to speak about separate disability? And another question is how to become a deaf-blind teacher. How many who can answer? I don't know. It is a question for all participants.
I could start if you want to.
Yeah, please do.
Yes. Thank you for stressing some question. It's very nice to have some kind of interaction with you participants. And I would like to just to say something about that. Why do you need to have both? Why do you need to have it as a special disability? Why can't you talk about deaf and blind? And there is no easy answer of it, but I would like to go back to the Nordic definition, and also the colleague from Riga also lifted up that the deafblind is the combined vision and hearing impairment of such severity that it's hard for the impaired senses to compensate for each other. That means that you cannot use the methods that you do with children and with adults as well who are blind or vision impaired, and or with a deaf or hard of hearing the children, because if they can't compensate with their sight because it's such a low sight, and it became the sight is very difficult to use if you're hard of hearing. So that's why we need to have it as a disability, because you need other methods and other concepts, and that's where the tactile senses will be so important. And I think it was because it's so, when we have such a short of time, but we just want to start this cooperation. And what Annika was talking about is how to work with a tactile sense, and you just get a taste of it. But it's very much knowledge to learn about it, to do those assessments. Do you,
yes.
Someone else who want to
yes,
add something?
There is a question about where is the place where you can become a deaf-blind teacher? Is it any place somewhere?
Annika, do you want to say something? You are muted, Annika.
Okay, maybe
Okay.
Maria has the
Yes,
answer.
yes, I can try. You know that we in the northern countries, or maybe you could say the Scandinavian countries, because it's some difference between all the northern area and the Scandinavian countries. But often you study to a special pedagogue, and then you maybe have some special knowledge about hearing or in vision, and then you can add it on. So there is no education just for everything, but when you can also have some courses and so on within, you know, in Groningen in the Netherlands, they have a master on communication for people with deafblindness, and it's in English, so you can take it even so from the whole Europe, it's okay to take it, but that's very deep knowledge, of course, if it's on a master level. But there you it's the only way for now that you can study on that level on communication in regarding to the congenital deafblindness.
Okay. Yeah, and it's a question about Lithuania, so the answer is the same. If you want to become professional for deafblind, it is the University of Groningen in Netherlands. In Lithuania, we do not have such a place. It is Europe. It is one place in Europe that you can apply for master degree.
Yeah, and I also think I would like to emphasize the cooperation between different professionals. The hearing teacher for children with hard of hearing and the teacher with vision impairment. The cooperation between them is very, very important. Now we have Annika among us, I think. Oh, but you are still muted.
You are muted. Okay.
Okay. Do we have another question, maybe?
Yes. I have the question about Lithuania. Is it any deafblind association in Lithuania? So yes, many years ago in 1996, there was a deafblind association. It was registered in the Ministry of Justice, but it was many years ago. And I'm sorry to say that this association is no longer existent. So it was an attempt, and now we have no association for the deafblind. Okay. And again, there is a question about where you can learn to work on a tactile modality, and the answer is the same, probably in this university, if you are doing your master degree, or if you, I think that, I don't know, please, Maria, tell.
Yes, and I would really like to encourage you to order the book about, if you can see it, you can support it, the book on tactile language, because it's have a theoretical ground in it, but it also have many practice examples. So you can I think you really would have some pleasure of reading it, and even if you don't take a course, if you there are different chapters in it on different levels, and there I'm very sure that you will receive a knowledge that you can use in your daily work afterwards. I've been at the Faroe Islands once, and they have no course to take there, but we just put a short timetable for when to read what, and maybe go out and try, because there are practical examples there. So I would really encourage you to start there.
Yeah, there are many questions about deafblind communication, about sign language. So I would like to tell that it is we have translated two very important books about congenital deafblindness, and I would like to welcome everybody who is interested in deafblind communication to contact Lithuanian Training Centre for the Blind, and we can arrange some kind of presentation, and we can give those books. They are very good books with DVD, with live pictures of deafblind people living in Norway, in different countries of Europe. So there are many people I see questions about the questions about they need the answers may be seen in this book. So it would be very fine that those who are listening to this seminar will contact, and we will arrange another small meeting in order to make clear what about we are talking. We are talking about congenitally deafblind children. We are not talking about those people who became visually impaired during their life. We just are talking about those who was born with very difficult disability, which do not let them themselves to be in this world together with us. And that is why it took so long to learn about them, just trying to understand their tactile sense and how to be with them. So yes, yes.
Yes, and now when we have been living in this digital world for 1.5 years, it has, of course, it hasn't been so nice, but it has opened up for so much easier cooperation. Because you said you wanted them to contact you, the Lithuanian Center, and maybe we can have some kind of 1 hour just guiding through the book, because it's so much easier now when we are used to the digital platforms. And also in the definition, because I just read the definition and then the main implication. But under that, when you find it on our website, you can also say much more what are the consequences. And I think that's the one of you who are working with acquired deafblindness, I think that you will find some good things there as well. And there are also a book on Nordic Welfare Center's homepage with life adjustment when you have acquired deafblindness and it's changing and became progressive. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was so happy that in Riga, when they have read the definition, that they discovered that, no, I wasn't happy that they discovered, but that they used the definition and managed to see that, okay, but then we have some children who have this combined. So it's good to hear.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, yes. Okay.
Now we have Annika with us.
Annika, we have
Can
again.
you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
We can hear you.
Well, yes, it was some technical issues here from this place. So I was in need to go in and out again. So I didn't actually hear your last questions and your reflections on that.
Yeah, there is one question about deafblindness and autism.
Yep.
It is the question, I will read it. How do you help the child and the parents who have deafblind child with autistic features? How do you do it?
Yes, so it's that's a very, very tricky one, actually, because like I said earlier, of course, it's possible to have these two very rare conditions at the same time. So it's probably some out there. But very often we see that children with autism spectrum syndromes that maybe have vision issues or hearing issues or something like that. Maybe sometimes they are wrongly labeled in a sense. Maybe they are congenital deafblind instead of being autism, because it depends on the knowledge of the people who have assessed them. Because very often among children with congenital deafblindness, because they don't stretch out naturally, because they can't see and can't hear, their behavior becomes sometimes very close and like persons with autism spectrum syndromes. So I don't have a clear answer. So very often when we intervene within the bodily tactile modality, and then you can have a good knowledge, because if they map really close to that intervention, it maybe it's a time to raise some other questions, for example, because the complexity of congenital deafblind is, like Maria also said, the isolation part of it, the ability to be a part of the society, reaching out, and that can lead to recognizable behavior that can be like what we put in categories like self-stimulation, and so further on, you know, that very often are connected with autism spectrum syndromes. Yes. So it's not an answer, but it's a complex situation, I think, and sometimes we can find children that has infantile autism, for example, that is actually deafblind and need another type of support because of the severe hearing and vision impairment instead of the autism spectrum syndrome. Yeah.
So, but in both cases, the tactile modality is, can I say, the key for the communication then?
Yes, it could be, but I also think that that the thing that we said about the new perspective and looking at the utterances as a communication thing, and instead of maybe self-stimulation or maybe just meaningless movements, then maybe you can find the key for communication. And if you start to think about it as combined vision and hearing impairment instead of autism at the first, and then you maybe interact in another way, and from there you can take the next step. But it's complex.
Okay.
It's really complex.
And there is a question for Annika. Annika, please do tell again, how many professionals participate in the assessment process?
It's very many, actually. It takes a long time. So in the assessment process, it's very often we have when a child or the family comes to us, you know, maybe very often from the hospital when they are young. It, for example, this is just a kind of explanation. For example, I get hold of that patient and the family, and then we start this intervention, and I always do that in a collaborative way, and it depends because we work also very interdisciplinarily. So it's kind of to approach this the consequences of the hearing and visual impairments. We can also sometimes collaborate with physiotherapists, what do you call it, ergotherapeut, Maria?
I don't know. I think it's ergotherapy.
Yes. Yeah. Of some other therapists and the hearing people, and so the total amount in the assessment process can be a lot, depend on the case, and it's tailored towards the need of that case. When that's said, the identification group is, I don't know how many was it,
I think there are 9 or 10.
9 or 10, yeah, yes, I think so. So,
but that's special for Norway, and Iceland also have a diagnostic team, but the other northern countries do not have this interdisciplinary team for identification of deafblindness. So it looks different in the countries.
Okay, Ligita is back. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. So, yes, it depends on the country.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
But
So,
the other northern countries look at Norway and Iceland, who have those diagnostic or the teams who are identify people with deafblindness, because it's very it's it's a higher quality level if you have this interdisciplinary team.
okay. So more questions. We're looking for questions. What will we just discussed what they gain from bodily tactile communication. Why do you stress bodily tactile communication? And another question is it a sign language or is it something else? Because,
so, do you want me to answer first?
Yes.
And Maria can, and all of you can actually. I stress bodily tactile modality because that's the only accessible sense they have. It's good enough for learning and development. So if you don't do that, you take away the child's opportunity to develop and learn. That's basically it. And that sounds very harsh and strong, but when you are a congenital deafblind person with such severe hearing and visual impairment that you can't that it can't compensate for each other, it's this one. This is the sensory potentials that you have to learn and develop from. So and that's why.
But what is it tactile communication has anything to do with the deaf sign language?
Yes, we use often. That's that's also hard, because I think, for example, communication and language development for children with congenital deafblindness doesn't necessarily look different than deaf people or seeing, hearing people or blind people. It does. The issues are that it has to be approached in a different modality where our world is not accessible. Yes, within that modality. So it's like so if they don't get the right support, it's so of course also depending of the child's other issues, their developmental. There could be lots of issues concerning that, but basically when we work with the authentic utterances, just that happened. That's why I stressed emotional, like be out in the world together, experience the world together, get experiences that it's possible to talk about, or utterances can come, and then you can start with the communication issues. But when the child comes to the next level, when you have to introduce a language, we often pick from the sign language and make that tactile, because it's easier to do that than with the voice. Of course, you have Tadoma strategies and stuff like that, but I basically just know one that I have come across in my lifetime. I
would like to add something, Annika. Yeah. Yes, just some basic and some briefly. If in Swedish sign language, the sign for car is like this when you are driving. It's totally meaningless for a deafblind children because they don't have the concept for how a car look or feel in its whole. But maybe the movement of putting the, you know, the security belt, the safety belt, or maybe something else in the movement. And if the child express that, then you can build on it, and then you can put on the conventional sign for car. But if it should be meaningful for the child, then it has to come from inside the body. So that's why we are going so hard for it. But if you are learning sign language as a partner, it's so much easier for you to interact with people with deafblindness, because then you have this, you have the signs, you have the body movements you are aware of it in a quite another level. Just some addition.
It's easier to be creative in a way when you have sign language.
Okay. Thank you very much. Our time is running out. So thank you to each and every one of you for being here today with us and speaking about very, very difficult subject, I see. So your participants from Lithuania are very welcome to find some answers in the Lithuanian training for the blind, because we just want to share the knowledge with which is in the books, and they are translated. The books are made by Nordic colleagues, and that will make the life of deafblind people easier, I think. Please contact, please look for the answers. We will try to find it together. And I hope that this is not the last meeting. We very much hope for the cooperation with Latvia. It is, I'm very sorry that we didn't manage to reach Male. She somehow, I don't know, but she is also together with us. And thank you very much, all of you. And
Thank you so much for having us.
It is not the last time.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Ligita, as well.
Thank you, Ligita.
Thank you.